Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real honor for me to introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Father Paolo Benanti. Father Benanti is a Franciscan of the Third Order Regular, a theologian, and a professor of ethics, bioethics, and the ethics of technology at the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome. He is widely recognized for his work at the crossroad of technology, philosophy, and morality, with a special focus on artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and the impact of the digital transformation of human life and society. Please join me in a warm welcome to Father Paolo Benanti.
Good morning and thank you. I am afraid that after this introduction I can just disappoint you, but okay, that's another point. Let me start from the perspective. One of the things that I'm involved to, beside the United Nations, is a national Italian government commission about information and publishing and the impact of AI. And we are focused on the same topics that is the undertitle of this meeting. What remains of the sense of truth when everything is possible to be written and to be seen? And AI is a huge innovation wheel on this. But because I'm a philosopher, and I teach philosophy of ethics and ethics of technology, I cannot stop myself from giving you a founding moment on what does it mean to have an ethical approach to technology. And to answer to that, let me be really, in some way provocative. I found these two pictures in one archive. I cannot resist from that with you. It's taken from 5th Street in New York, Manhattan, 5th Avenue in Manhattan. It's just an accident, it was not on purpose. It's taken on the early morning of Easter. I didn't make for personal choice. The first one on the left is in the early days of the last century. The second one is 13 years later. As you can see on the left, in 5th Avenue, there are just horses. As you can see on the right, the horses has gone 13 years later, and there are just cars. We can imagine that talking about ethics of technology is simple answering to one question. Which one of the two is the best? Well, and I can provoke you asking, why do you think is the best, Probably you can say that because the animal is a living being and could be suffering, it's better the second scenario and not the first. Someone else could be much more impressed by the social impact and can say that probably the left one is better because the people that has to take care of the horses lose their job. But okay, changing the wheel to a car or putting an iron on a horse is not so different. Someone else, scared by the environmental impact of such kind of transformation, can think that the left one is better because on the right we start the carbonization that brings us the problem that we know today. But I'm a professor, so I'm a little bit obsessive. And I found in the archive this number of the Appleton magazine, New York Journal of 1908, in the middle of transformation. That simple report that there was 13,000 New Yorkers in the summer of 1907 that died for an infection brought by a mosquitoes connected to the poo of the horses. So in the short period, the impact of carbonization was really better. Well, why I'm stressing you with horses and car? Because I would like simple to cancel the wrong question. Having an ethical approach to technology is not a matter of judging what is better and what is worst. And so what does it mean to ethically question the technology? Well, to answer to that, let me bring back to you what my professor at the time of my PhD in the United States was used to propose to us to understand what does it mean ethics of technology. I have the honor and the privilege to study in Washington, D.C., And when we started the class for PhD, this professor bring us to Manhattan. Can you imagine? We was 13 male that are going one weekend to Manhattan. Yoo-hoo, let's go. And he simply bring us on a bridge on a highway and ask us, what do you see? Okay, when we come over to the little disappointment we was believing to see the nightlife in Manhattan, well, 13 male in the same places, testosterone was really high, and everyone started to try to be the most smart man of the group. We say everything. At the end of the day, we have to surrender that what we are saying was simple concrete and asphalt. At that point, our professor bring us to a public library where we found 13 copies of a really thick book, more than 1,000 pages, that is the life of the politicians that simply shape New York as we know. The book is won a Pulitzer Prize and is so impactful that still today is one of the 100 most read books in the United States, non-fictional. The life of the politicians, that the name was Robert Moses, is really interesting. And we discovered that Moses, like every man on the 40 of the last century, has his own political view of society and reality. And one of the views that Moses has is that not all the citizens are the same. In his view, we are, around the fascism, Nazis, and things like that, is almost really shared, these things. Only the white, rich middle class is the one that is the best class in the city. And because they are the best class in the city, they deserve the best spot in the city. And to be sure that only the white, rich middle class can achieve a transfer from Manhattan to Jones Beach in Long Island, he allowed the public service to build an highway. The name is Parkway. If someone of you landed in JFK, coming back to Manhattan, you made the Parkway. Well, but how to keep only white people to the beach with the Parkway? Well, first, he didn't build any kind of public transportation like a train. Still today, if you would like to commute from JFK, you have to take an Uber or a cab. The second thing is that the concrete bridge over the highway, equal to any other bridge, are actually 2 feet, 66 centimeters lower than the standard. No bus can commute. Only people that can afford, at that point, a car can go to the beach. And here comes the first lecture of ethics of technology. Every technological artifact, when it is impacting a society, it works as a form of order and displacement of power. Well, we can summarize all the topics about AI and your job, your field, your mission, as a questioning technology to understand which kind of displacement of power and form of order it will introduce in what is the mission of your institution. Ethically speaking, that means that you can lose control of your mission because you are transferring to some kind of system that are not under your control, but they determine who can see and what can see inside the archive. Well, to be a little bit more clear, we moved through pandemics. I don't know how it works in your country. In Italy, the vaccination, the jab for the pandemics was given to population according to the age of birth. Well, a fundamental rights, the rights to health, was ordained inside the population thanks to an algorithm that was injected inside a web portal of a public services. So what the concrete and asphalt made for Moses Bridge today is made by an algorithm that produces a form of order and displacement of power. And the first thing is there are no neutral system of any kind that you can apply to your archive that do not work in that way, that do not produce a displacement of power and a form of order. You are usually the people in charge of the order of the archive, in which there is a way to find and look for things. If we allow a middle layer in the execution of the search that is driven by another system, and we don't discuss which kind of form of order and displacement of power these tools produce, we are simply allowing someone else to produce in our archive. This is the ethical debate, It's not what is better and what is worst. It's not what is good and what is bad. But who are the different stakeholders that has to take part on this kind of analysis to produce an innovation that is equal to an accomplishment in a better way of the mission of the institution that you represent. This is ethics, really inconvenient sometimes, but it's the beautiful job. I love this job because I have the freedom to make the question, and usually I run away before giving any kind of answer. The answer that you have to give is yours. But the question is this: the new form of archive, the new idea of what will be foundable or not foundable in the archive of your institution depend on the quality of this algorithmical bridge that you will put in place to handle the enormous amount of treasure and values that you collect. Well, but there is another example for the history of technology that can help us to tell something more on what does it mean, an ethical approach to technology. Let's move back to 1970. Okay, I'm teaching an 120 hours class on ethics of technology, so I can talk a lot. Let me be short. Believe on my words, the changing that United States had from a countryside country to a city country was made possible from cheap and fresh food available in the big city. To make it possible, the canned tomatoes was a core element. Well, the canned tomatoes was in the 70s produced almost by 302,000 farmers in California. There no seasonal migration from Mexico. And they harvest the tomato, transform, and send to all the US market. In 1975, the University of California simple patented a new machine, a giant one, big like this stage, that was able to move on the tomatoes line, take the tomatoes, simple crash the plant, and have the tomato boxed on the back of machine with a single pass. The cost of harvesting of tomatoes moved from a lot of dollars to $2 to tons. Do you know what happened in 1980? Well, the number of farmers lowered to 240. Why? Are we producing less tomato or are we consuming less tomato? Actually not, the market was double. What happened is that the price of that machine in 1975 was $175,000, almost $500,000 of today. And this is the second element of innovation. When you have an innovation, the innovation produces a concentration of the market driven by the fact that the ones that cannot afford the cost of innovation are pushed outside of the market. And now I'm to tell you a really Italian bias, please, be merciful. There is a second effect on such kind of transformation. A mechanical tool on 1975 has not the quality that we can have today with a robotic hand. And so to have such kind of grasping of tomatoes by a mechanical things, we have to select a most resistant tomato. That means thicker skin, that for an Italian like me is tasteless. But that things produce another things. That innovation change the nature of the product. So coming to the second ethical driver, innovation comes with a cost, and not all the players can afford it. And the second thing is that the innovation is changing the nature of the product. Let's see the news market. The news that today, the journal that today can get by are the ones that can afford to be on the big platform on the web and pay to be simple visible to user. But the most read articles are not the best article, are not the Pulitzer one, but are the one that the algorithm can pick better and deliver to the user. And this does not mean quality in every situation. So such kind of transformation in innovation is a question that you have to face before you apply a technology to change the nature in which you can discover, find, communicate, and transmit what is inside your archive. We can imagine that we will be able to find much more things thanks to the semantic ability of AI, but it's not given for sure that it's the best result, or is the tomatoes more juicy, if you allow me to use these metaphorical things. Once again, I'm not judging technology. I'm a super fan of technology. I'm simply telling you that we need to open up a space of confrontation and discussion to have such kind of ethical guardrail that allows such kind of innovation to be applied as a form of development of the mission of your institution. At least, but not at last, you know, we know different kind of technology in the history. One kind of technology that we know is called a special purpose technology. It's the core element of our humanity. You know, we wake up one day, we was in the cave, and we was hungry. And so we develop a tool to harvest more fruit. Then such kind of special purpose technology evolve, and the tool become a lot of new tools, up to the tractor that today is making one of our species able to take care of thousands of acres of land. But in the history of technology, there are moments in which develop new kind of technology that we call general purpose technology. Electricity, for example, is a general purpose technology. We don't use electricity to do one thing, but it's really difficult to find something today that works without electricity. Well, AI is much more similar to such kind of general purpose technology than not a special purpose technology. And what happens when we have a general purpose technology? Well, looking at my shoulder, you can see on the left side a man. This man is Samuel Insull. It's an Irishman migrated to the United States. Then I have to be back to Ireland because he was with some trouble with the law. But he was the founder of General Electric Company. And the model that Samuel Insull applied to distribute a general purpose technology like electricity was to lowering the price. Much more family can afford it, and we can distribute electricity inside the society. It's what the United States call democratization, actually. On the right side, you can see this archival map that is taken from the first 5-year plan of Lenin. It's called Goelro plan. If there is someone from Ukraine, don't get offended. At that time, Lenin understood Ukraine as a part of Socialistic Republic. Well, but what is the goal of the plan? To produce the distribution of the Soviet ideology thanks to electricity. So when we look at the general purpose technology, we have to understand that there is not such kind of distribution without a general understanding of the word and the value. And it's not a case that today the cloud approach, no two different approach, one a Chinese one and a United States one. So once again, because you are to apply AI to your archives, you have to understand that there is a core assumption behind any kind of general purpose technology that can fit or can simply collide with the core value of the institution that you represent. But if this is ethics, what does it mean AI? How we have to understand AI, to questioning AI in an ethical way? Well, to understand what does it mean AI, let's start from the man from my shoulder. You know, this man is Claude Shannon. Claude Shannon is the man that simply defined the concept of information. I simply jump over this concept that changed the nature of our world. But after the war, he used the concept of information to produce a really new machine. This actually grainy and dusty frame is taken from a YouTube archive that is showing Claude Shannon, showing to people their own machine. The first machine controlled by information was a little mechanical mouse that he called Theseus, like the mythological heroes, that was able to run inside that is a maze, all connected by wire. It's open the maze. And the mouse, when run inside the maze, every time that he hit a wall, produce a closing of a circuit, one bit of information, we can say, that produce a rotation of the mouse of 90 degrees in another direction. Hitting the wall, after hitting the wall, the mouse was able to find the exit from the maze. So what's going on? When we apply information to the control of machine, well, the machine is not anymore like the Industrial Revolution 1, an engine that is making again and again and again the same things. But the machine is able to acquire from us an ends, and to adjust such kind of ends with his own means. So the new nature of machine and AI is neither less than the evolution of this concept allow the archive to acquire an ends by the user and to adjust the means to satisfy the ends. Well, such kind of tools, the Theseus mouse, was built in 1948 and hit the market in early 2000 with the name of Roomba, the little vacuum cleaner, when we was able not to wire all the house, but to put all the memory of the house conformation inside the machine. But moving from Shannon to one of his colleagues, that is Norbert Wiener, we was able to understand that as a design procedure. And the design is called cybernetic. So we can put in front of the machine a sensor, the sensor produces information, and the return of information produces a changing in the behavior of the machine. Welcome to cybernetic. Please take notes that we are using information as a form of control. Well, but as always happened in the history of the human beings, also if it's not well noted by the history, are the women that are bringing the most innovative concept. And this woman, Margaret Mead, that was part of the group of the three, she was an anthropologist, have a brilliant idea. Well, I can use this system to explain, for example, how works things that are difficult to mechanically explain. So, for example, Margaret Mead applied to the human body. We can, for example, explain the woman's cycle as a feedback of interaction of hormone between organ and a sensor that is given by, for example, by part of the brain. But we can use also in society. I can have an external stimulus in society that can change the behavior of people. Well, philosophically speaking, this is a huge thing, because from the Greek philosophy on, Aristotle and other people, we are used to, for example, explain the human behavior with something that is a final category, final causes. Like, for example, freedom. Why you arrived to Cinecittà? Because you are free. Well, now I can explain or produce or control through something that is a causation model. A cause B, that cause C, that cause A. So we can imagine an interaction between human beings and machine that is not simple given by the freedom of the user, but by the number of signals that are produced from the machine and come back to the human beings. This is the technological scheme of what I'm trying to tell to you. But Norbert Wiener actually has a huge conscience crisis in the 60s. Because, the first application of these things was in the military. And you can produce a really better missile with such kind of a sensor control flight. And so the problem was, according to Norbert Wiener, the use of human beings in a society driven by information. But this brings us to another thing. If we put sensor and machine as a way to control the machine, you know what is the best sensor for the machine? The human beings. But if sensor and human beings are connected on the level of information, and this is something that the German philosopher Heidegger in 1969 quoted and noted without knowing what the technology will bring, we cannot say if it's the human being that is the sensor for the machine, or if it is the machine that is a sensor for the human beings. So, to give you an example, next time that you see a young adult on the street with the smartphone, is his finger that is making the sensor for the telephone and is moving the screen? Or are the notifications of the smartphone that are making the sensor and controlling him? Well, I'm simply suggesting to you that we are not applying AI in changing only the way in which we access to your archive. But because AI is something that works in this way, will change also the way in which the user will connect to your archive. Pushing the behavior of the user may be in wanted direction that you design. Or maybe because it's not discussed and outside of the discussion that we are having, you can see emerge a user behavior that was not intended and that is not given for granted that is the best use of the archive. So there is a section that has to be discussed, and is this user experience of the people that will interact with your digital archive. I'm used to say, sorry to say it too short as a tweet, that the biggest political action in our contemporary day is the design of user experience. Because the way in which we design the interface to digital things is the way in which we are orienting and allowing people to do things or not to do other things. It's not the first time that we saw it. At the end of World War II, Winston Churchill has to decide how to rebuild the English Parliament that was bombed by the Nazis. And he decided to make as it was in original. At the inaugurational speech, he says something really clear. First, we shape the building, then the building shape us. You will be the generation that will shape the nature of such kind of intelligent digital archive, then that archive will shape the nature of the user that will access to it. And this means that you have also a responsibility on what you are giving to the next user. But, I love to be problematic, sorry for that. This is, next time I will not come. Well, this is a new nature. The real problem is the new nature of the object that we are building. I have nothing with Elon. It's not true, but it's not to criticize Elon here. This computational ability that we infuse in all the object transform the nature of the object in a new object that we can define as a computational or software-defined object. Let me give you a classical example, this smartphone, okay? Probably you buy it. If it's the last generation, between 1,000 and 1,500 euros. Well, but you buy a little square of metal, glass, and silicon that is useless without the software that is inside. But we have a problem. You bought the clank, but you just have a license on the software that make it usable. And a software-defined tools means, just to be clear, that if the software is broken, the nature of the things is changed forever. This is Amazon Go. I don't know if you experienced that. I'm teaching in Seattle, so I love to try this stuff. There is no human beings inside. You enter, do what you want, and the software allows you to build the things that you have. If the software breaks, this is not anymore a store. It's a warehouse. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out. If you transform your archive in a software-defined archive, who controls the software layer will control the nature of what you have. But there is a most ethically problematic layer on this, The problems arise about an old concept of property. Roman rights, that is the source of every rights around the world, was used to say that when you own something, well, you have three fundamental rights. I will tell in Latin and then I try to translate. Usus, abusus, and fructus. Usus, the right to use. Abusus, that is not abuse, is the right to destroy. And fructus, that is the right to take the fruits from the use of what you have. Supposing you have an horse. You can ride the horse when you want. You can transform the horse, this is really Italian, sorry, in a mortadella. That is a kind of food. Horrible, I know, but it's on tradition. You can rent your horse and take the money for the work that the horse makes for someone else. But now, let's try to a software-defined object. Can you abuse it? Yes, if you destroyed your mobile phone, everyone is happy because they sell you another one. Can you use it? Well, try to transfer a file from an Android device to a Macintosh computer. Welcome to the hell. If you buy the last iPhone, 17, I think, the last one that came out. Well, you buy for a really sophisticated chip that is able of AI function. But in Europe, you are not allowed to use. Because the software producer Apple is fighting with European community, and they don't allow you to use it. It's like if you have an horse, but you can go where you want with the horse. It's someone else that decides. But what is really subtracted to you is the fructus. You get no money for the using of these things. A lot of digital platforms take the monies for that. So what does it mean? That when you are transforming, and you have to, your archive through AI, you are making a software-defined AI archive. Well, at that point, if you don't negotiate the ownership and the relations of uses, abuses, and fructus on such kind of platform, you can lose control, but you can use also the revenue that can come from this kind of using of archive with AI. You know, just to make things really clear, if you allow an AI to use all the data in your archive, you have the best things, human-generated video, that could be used to train an AI. Should you be paid for that? Because the AI is much more skilled or not? Welcome to usus, abusus, and fructus. So I know, difficult question is the good of my job. We run away after that. But you have to question yourself this, because it's part of your responsibility and duty. Now, let's move on. The time is running. Well, to another topics. We have a problem in using the machine. You know, we developed the first computer during the World War II. It was ENIAC. And ENIAC was able to solve the partial differential equation of von Neumann. My background is in engineer, I'm sorry. That is a really complex equation that was used to shape the lantern that was the deflector of explosion that ignite the nuclear bomb. So the computer was developed to make the nuclear bomb. One of the engineers that make ENIAC wrote to one of his colleagues, I'm obsessive, I found the archive. ENIAC is unbelievable. It can solve the partial differential equation of von Neumann in 30 minutes. 27 to punch the card, 3 to make the calculation. It was clear that the bottleneck in the relationship between man and computer was the man. The bandwidth, it's so good to make this example to you. You know what I'm talking about. Between the computer to the man, because there is a screen, is really high. The bandwidth from man to the computer, punching the screen, is really low. You know how long you make to make a record of an element inside your archive. Well, we make an evolution. We develop a keyboard, slow. We develop mouse, Windows. We develop touch. What is the best and fastest interface? Natural language. So the real use of generative intelligence has to be the perfect interface between the human being and computer. And if we understand in that perspective, that will be a revolution. You know, we are 8 billion and counting on the face of the earth. And we have 7 billion of smartphones. But there are only 27 million of people that are able to code. That means that 99.65% of population are depending on others to use the machine. Now, if I can use my own language to use the machine, that means give back the power to people to use computational things. And this is the really innovative things. If you think to your archive, I have to learn the way in which you code what you have in your archive to be able to use it. The ability to express myself in my natural language, I'm not really practical on television, so probably I will look for top-down shooting on television. That is mean nothing, and the machine understands that I'm looking for the history of changing, of framing things in the history of television. That could be an empowering. Allowing people to empower their own hands through a new interface that is not depending on a technical language is something that could be make really democratic and accessible any kind of archive. Well, but everything we are talking about, and I'm going to finish after some other example, is that all that we are talking about need a sort of capital. You know, it's like an industrial revolution. Now the metaphorical images of image revolution is used by a lot of philosophers and a lot of social analysts. But everyone is saying that the real capital are the data. No, the capital are not the data. The capital is the computational power. You know, and what is going on is that computational power arises after World War II in a centralized computational power that we are used to call, in some way, mainframe. And the mainframe was able to shape the organizational nature of the company. The company organized themselves to be able to access to the computational asset that was given by the mainframe. In the 1980s, the most powerful computer in the world was in the Pentagon. The second one was in Walmart home base, and it controlled any kind of scaffold around the America. And they organized the company to be computer-driven. But, you know, as usually happens, there are a social change. And in the 70s, we start to think, thanks to something that happened from the university, that everything that is centralized is bad. We would like to be more democratic. And if in Europe it becomes, you know, power to the people and things like that, in Silicon Valley, it began moving from a centralized computing things of the East Coast to personal computer of the West Coast, having a personal computational power. And the personal computer arises, and the most personal and intimate form of personal computer happen with the smartphone. You know, I'm used to teach to the university, and when I say that the smartphone is an intimate computational device, my students look at me with a face in which I read boomer. And then I ask to them, okay, let's make an example. Do you have a smartphone? Yes, professor. Take it. Yes, professor. Unlock it. Yes, professor. Pass to the man to your right. No, professor. That means that there is something that is intimate. And the smartphone was able to allow us to dream a new free world. It was the first decades of this century, and in 2011, we know the Arabic Spring. And we believe that the access to every time computation make us free to communicate and to desire the best value that we can desire. But 10 years later, 2021, the same computational object put us in the front of, you know, the riot of Capitol Hills. And we start to think that that computational object could be the enemy of a democracy and a public sphere. Today, I'm not going on that, but I know that you know the alteration of the historical memory that an AI can produce could be the end game move to ending such kind of historical referring to facts. But what is interesting to me, as someone that is in charge of ethics of AI, is that we discover in 2020 the pandemic. And we was able to get by the pandemic thanks to personal computational system. We was able to make Zoom call, going to the bank without going to the banks and things like that. What does it mean? That during the last 20 years, we simply make a computational transformation of the reality, like the archive that you would like to digitize. But, you know, there is something new. Starting from 2022, AI arrived. And AI produces new things, because this device has not the computational power that are needed to run AI. I need a new centralized things that we call cloud. But this time, the cloud will absorb all the process that we digitize with the AI. So we have to be aware that every time that we talk about AI and using of AI in a computational service, we are talking about something that is able to concentrate the power, and the one that will control the computational power are the ones that are able to control the execution of the process. Well, I bring to you some kind of challenge. Sorry for that. But I think you are the generation that can decide if archive could be the next democratical tools that can't be back the memory in an objective way, or you could be the generation that in some way can dissolve such function of objectivity, giving to few computational power the power to decide what exists and not exists in our memory. Thank you very much, and happy to be here.